So it's 1 minute after 6, and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Board of Trustees of Dexter Township. And I'm going to start with a roll call and conflict of interest check. So, Mara Smith?
Here.
Lonnie Scott?
Here.
Karen Nolte? Here. Michelle Stamoulis?
Here.
Gretchen Driscoll? Laura Sanders?
Here.
Myself, Karen Sickinga, I am present. Does anybody have any conflict of interest with any of the agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move right into approval of the agenda. And the board had requested last month that we provide a table of contents on the agenda. And so I put on your desk, so that the package that went out last week didn't have the page numbers on it, and the table of, and the new agenda that was on all of your desks. The only difference is that the page numbers are noted, so you can find the agenda items more easily.
Well, thank you.
So, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Matt, seconded by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, then with unanimously approved the agenda. So we're going to start with a public hearing on the capital and operating budget, and I see a lot of familiar faces and a couple of new faces here. So I think most people are aware that this will be the second public hearing on the budget. We decided last month to push forward the approval of the budget to give us an opportunity to publish the public hearing in a print newspaper as well as the online publication that occurred last month. So there isn't anything different about this budget that's before everyone from the last month. But this is just another opportunity for the public to come and speak with us. So does any member of the public wish to speak to us about the budget proposal? Okay, well, hearing none, then I'm going to close the public hearing on the capital and operating budget and move to the call for public comment on agenda items. So does any member of the public wish to speak to any of the agenda items? Okay, guys, I see all of you. So then, hearing none, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. And I did want to call to your attention, there's a new copy of the boards and commissions. We were supposed to have Gretchen listed as the alternate for the WWRA, and that got left off the one that was in your packet. So we've given you a new updated copy. We're going to be passing this out again next month with the dates and times of the meetings, so anybody who wants to go to those meetings will know when they are. So that's one piece of
The
news.
people that are the liaison on these committees could fill in the date, third week of the month, the address and the time to make it easier for Sam.
Yeah,
And
that'd
just
be
like
awesome. Yeah.
fill it out. So like if you're on the local roads committee, whatever committee you're on, just fill it out, and that will help Sam research.
That would be awesome if you fill it out now and hand it back to me. I'll give them all to Sam tomorrow. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I just wanted to make the amendment unless we're moving it with that amendment already.
That's true. Maybe we need to amend the consent agenda to reflect the updated materials. Okay, so do I hear a motion to amend the consent agenda to reflect the updated materials?
So moved.
And a second for that? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so unanimously approved. Okay, now do I hear or can I take up Gretchen's motion to approve the consent agenda, and can I have a second? Second. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Say aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, so hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Okay, so now we're going to move into approval of the changes to the zoning ordinance. We have a couple of special guests here tonight. We have Marty Straub, who's the chair of our Planning Commission, and Brooke Smith, the chair of our Zoning Board of Appeals. Do you guys want to just come up, or you can stay seated if you want, but I wanted to invite you to come up and speak to those agenda items. And I'm going to start, I'm
I shot myself one day looking over Janice's screen when the camera was poking at her, at my bald spot, which I didn't even know was that.
Yeah. But before you guys,
Marty, would you make sure that the green light is on the microphone? You guys need to be within a few inches of the microphone.
and I want to just note, I think hopefully you guys received the email from our planning consultant Megan this morning, but there was additional materials included in the packet today that were really planning commission materials. That's pages 38, 39, and 45. That goes into quite a bit more technical details, I think, about these proposed amendments to the ordinance. So you can just disregard those if you want, or you're welcome to ask any questions you have. I mean, they're public materials, but they're just weren't intended for this board. And so we're now on page 32, and I also want to remind the board that this is part of an initiative where we are trying to go through the zoning ordinance and amend anything that doesn't make sense or that has proved to be problematic or inconsistent. This is probably going to be the first of several such amendments to the zoning ordinance. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you guys because I think you'll be probably a little bit more articulate than I am.
No, that's a great introduction, thank you. And just a little more on that process. So what's before you tonight are items that we found through exercising what I still call the new zoning ordinance. It's a few years old now. Staff is also going through on a proactive basis to look for those types of things that may be inconsistent, may conflict from area to area, that need to be addressed. So as the supervisor said, the planning commission will have likely multiple changes that we will address at each of our upcoming meetings until we get all of these issues satisfied. Some of them are rather minor. Some of them are pretty significant when you go to apply them in real life. So the one that Brooke and I are really speaking to tonight is under the current zoning ordinance, there was a change in the decision criteria for appeals that zoning board of appeals will hear. And some wording, I was going to say crept in, but I don't, the new zoning ordinance mostly preceded me. And I think portions of it were probably picked up from somebody's kind of master or sample zoning ordinance combined with perhaps some old elements. I am aware that it was quite a lengthy process and kind of got bounced around a little bit. Planning commission didn't deal with it totally throughout that whole process. And again, that preceded me. But the wording that, if you want to call it, crept in or ended up, took some leeway from the ZBA. So if someone, under the decision criteria, and this usually has to do with dimensions,
Marty, can I interrupt you for 1 second? So Marty is actually speaking to the write-up that's on page 41 right now, not page 32, so go ahead, Marty.
And Brooke will probably want to deal with the specifics of that, but I'm also the planning commission's rep to ZBA, and ZBA took this issue up and made a proposal back to the planning commission, which the planning commission dealt with at our last meeting, that's why it's before you. But what came out of ZBA, and I didn't catch it at that point either until it got to the planning commission, we think we're largely okay with what's before you, but there is one word where I think we say the instead of which kind of denotes that there would be one unique and special solution to whatever the problem is. The way the wording was before, it seemed to not leave any our decision or our discussion, that we deal with that or nothing, or we then kind of semi-negotiating that, well, 2 feet might be, how about 23 inches, or how about a half an inch? So this gets us back to if the ZBA can determine that, yeah, for what that particular issue is, and sometimes it's porches or sidewalks, it's not, actually counted square footage within a dwelling. Usually it's around the lakes where everything is smaller, and most of those lots are grandfathered in. So every time somebody wants to make a change, it comes to ZBA. So anyhow, that's kind of a somewhat gross background of what's before you. We presently have an unworkable, or as ZBA, we have determined it's unworkable. Planning Commission agreed with that and promoted the language that's before you. Work had some other discussion about the thought after the PC meeting, so you might as well take it from here to get to the precise portion of this.
Let me ask a question first, just to be clear, just so I'm clear in my mind, and Gretchen, you may be able to answer this as well. It seems to me that what the Planning Commission was approved was a change in the wording from, so it says reasonable amount, the variance is, and instead of the minimum, you're changing it to reasonable so that it's consistent. Reasonable amount, and then reflecting that same language in the rest of that sentence, right? And then the other requested change is you want to say, instead of saying the reasonable amount as the Planning Commission approved it, you want to say a reasonable amount. So we're changing the word minimum to the word, the Planning Commission has recommended that we change the word minimum to the word reasonable, and you are further requesting a minor clerical change, which is to change the word the to the word a. So a, from the minimum to a reasonable, which kind of makes
Right.
sense.
The minimum was our big hang-up, because there you get into negotiating, what was that portion?
What is the
be
minimum?
36
Yeah.
inches, deep, or does the sidewalk need to go exactly there, which is, generally of little consequence, but it really became like a hard point that we could not, we really couldn't go beyond the way it was written. Now, the and or the, or the, whichever you just said, seems a little more like semantics.
Yeah.
And the reason that came to PC is because that's what we said at ZBA, but then when I was studying up for the PC meeting and reviewed what it used to be under the old zoning ordinance and what we forwarded on, yeah, that's where that wording change comes from. And we did not act upon it that night. We just, took what was recommended and what was on our agenda, and then, Brooke kind of reflected on that later on. So, our collective recommendation would be that, and I don't know, and I guess the attorney's not here tonight, if you have it within your power to make that one word change.
Yes, we do. I did.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So that would be the cleanest way to do it, not have like PC mop-up of something that PC thought they already mopped up.
Yeah. Brooke, did you want to add anything?
So the only thing I wanted to say is kind of a more global background here on this is that for all the time that I've been on the ZBA, which started, I don't know, nearly 10 years ago, up until the adoption of the latest version of the zoning ordinance, we had worked with an ordinance that said that the ZBA could approve variances that were a reasonable amount. And so, for now nearly 3 years, we've been working with an ordinance that says it's gotta be the minimum amount, and yet, we haven't actually been doing that. We continue to apply a reasonable standard. We'd like you to, tell us that a reasonable standard is a reasonable thing to do. And the other thing is changing this article from the, which was the word that came up from the Planning Commission, which also came from the ZBA, because one night we were quickly wanting to tell the Planning Commission commission what change we wanted, and we didn't think carefully about the choice of the article. But what we really need is a reasonable amount, and if you can approve that, we would be very happy. Thank you.
Thanks.
So do you guys, I know this seems technical, but it's important, as what Marty was saying, when the rubber meets the road, it turns out to be quite important. So, Lonnie, did you have a question?
I was just gonna point out that actually in our packets, the suggested motions for the board do say a reasonable. The only
Well-
grammatical error is on the front part of the memo.
Well, there's motion number 2 is the one, so that she gives us 3 options of motions, and motion number 2 is the motion, is the preferred motion that accomplishes what Brooke and Marty are asking for.
I was
Yeah,
just pointing, it's correct there as opposed to the front of the memo. It says a reasonable instead of the reasonable in the actual motion suggestion. And on page 2,
I don't understand what you're saying. When you say the front of the memo, you mean right here, number 4? Where
Yeah.
it says 4? Because that's what the board, that is what the PC approved. That's what the planning commission approved. So the planning commission approved reasonable amount. The variance is the reasonable amount necessary. We're suggesting that instead of reflecting exactly that language, we go with this
Yeah.
language in motion.
I-
number 2.
yep,
Yeah.
I was just making sure that everyone, if we went with the sample motion, that it actually already corrects the grammatical.
Right, that's right. It already corrects the
Yeah.
grammatical. Yeah.
I would suggest, I would move motion number 2. If you
Okay.
want me to read it.
I'm okay with you not reading it unless.
Number 2.
Page 43.
Oh, okay. A lot of different motions, thanks for giving us all these different options,
Yeah.
but it makes it really complicated,
Yeah.
so.
Megan asked if we wanted this, and I said, well, because it's the first one, I think,
Better
It-
safe than sorry.
yeah, good, because I didn't know, so.
So the motion basically varies is a reasonable amount, minimum necessary to mitigate the practical difficulty for the following reasons. The text amendment is compatible with goals and policies of the master plan and is consistent with state and federal law.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, is there any more discussion with that motion on the table? Are we ready for a vote then? Okay, I'm gonna do a voice vote, given that this is an ordinance amendment, and I'll start with you, Karen.
Yes.
Lonnie Scott,
Yes.
Mary Smith,
Yes.
Michelle Stambalos,
Yes.
Gretchen Driscoll,
Yes.
Laura Sanders.
Yes.
And myself, Karen Sikinga, yes. Great, thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Yeah, did you,
Want us to do anything at all with your next item?
Well, why don't I try to explain it, and then you guys tell me if I'm doing it wrong. So this one, the second ordinance amendment begins on page 32, and this one came to light, I think, because we had an active applicant whose case couldn't be adjudicated in a way that everybody thought was fair and reasonable. And this is, I feel like you guys should probably explain this, or maybe you, Gretchen, but what I think happens is that when you go above a certain acreage, like 10 acres or whatever, suddenly the allowed coverage plummets. So it, as a proportion of the total property. And this creates a more gradual adjustment of the total allowable square footage on a property, which is more similar to what we had before in the old zoning ordinance. Did I capture that? Did you guys want to add anything to that?
not unless there's any questions, but no, you nailed that, thank you.
So an applicant like Cornman Farms wants to convert, I think, a tent to a gazebo or a more permanent structure. And even though it's not very big and it's been sitting there on the property for a long time, because the maximum was set at a square foot amount instead of a percent of the overall property size, there was no way to issue a variance for it because it was not compliant with the law. And so the fix is to change the law. And we're trying to do that expeditiously because this applicant is kind of waiting to move forward with construction.
And I just point out, it's a reasonable change, it makes a lot more sense, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that was the general consensus of the planning commission, this recommendation.
And it was brought to us, I think, by the ZBA. The ZBA said, hey, this isn't reasonable. Will you guys take a look at this? Our planning consultant looked at it, and then the planning commission, and everybody said, yeah, this was probably, most likely a mistake in how the ordinance was executed.
Can I ask a question? Or not?
Technically, you're not supposed to ask a question.
That's why I asked if I
Yeah,
could.
yeah. But you can ask me a question after. How about if you catch me afterwards? Yeah. So do any members of the board have questions?
Is there a preferred motion? I see 4 motions again. Is there number 1, the preferred?
I believe that motion number 2 was in case there was any concerns with the recommendation of the planning commission. And I think probably, since this is our first one coming forward, I would recommend that we identify which is the recommended motion of the planning commission as part of our agenda, because it was very unwieldy. Like, basically, for these 2 ordinance amendments, there were 4 different options. And so I think for somebody that wasn't at the planning commission meeting, it's like, whoa, and even somebody that was at the planning commission meeting like me went, whoa, when I was looking at the package today. So I appreciate all of you being like, whoa.
Yeah, so we
Quietly.
should make a note that
Yeah.
it would be good to call out
Would
the
be helpful.
preferred option.
Yeah.
And
so,
probably make it clear what the other options are for.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Okay, do I have a motion then to act on this matter?
I'll move motion number 1, which is on page 35. Which is
Second.
basically taking the planning commission recommendation.
Any other questions before we vote?
Well, maybe just to state that what the actual change will be is the maximum lot coverage for buildings and be 5, what is it? I think we should maybe say what it is since we said there was a table.
Page 37.
For the recreation conservation, maximum lot coverage would be 5% for buildings, and for the rural residential and the ag districts, 10% for residential uses. And that will be instead of the table, well, adjusting the table, rather. So you all heard that we were taking out page 38, 39, and 39, correct? Okay.
Any more discussion?
I just want to say in general, I appreciate that you all are doing this. I had a reason to go through our zoning ordinances recently, and there are a lot of areas that need cleaning up, and so I appreciate the effort here to do this, and also to make it easier for the residents. I mean, I think this change specifically is one of those things that seems a whole lot easier than what we currently have. So, thank you.
So the planning commission is hearing a couple more of these next week. One is to remove the requirement to get a zoning permit for like siding and roof replacement and things that aren't actually regulated in the zoning ordinance. So that'll be a big improvement if approved. I think the residents will be very happy with that. So are there any questions about these motions on the board right now?
I just want to clarify. I'm not sure that I'm totally understanding, and I just want to. So the previous allowable building on 10 acres was 2%. And now it's 10%
Of the total lot coverage.
of the total lot coverage. It was 2%, now we're going to 10%. Okay.
Well,
We
it's-
also,
I think it's graduated, right? So it's the larger your acreage, the lower the lower the percent coverage. Whereas before it was a square footage number. So and the square foot was pretty low.
Right. I remember running into this too, when we were building on our property.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the old zoning ordinance was 10%. The current zoning ordinance, there was a sliding scale that small lots were 10%, and then down to like 5.2 or 3% or something for 5 acres. But that calculation, like 11,543, something like that, 11,540 something square feet, then held from that to 1,000 or infinity. And that was the part that created the issue that ZBA came across, because in this particular instance, you look at it and say, well, what they're trying to do makes sense, it's good for the township, but it's capped, can't be violated, there's no real appeal to it. So this just takes it back to the 10%. I had asked around a little bit to try to determine the origin, how did we go from 10%, which is consistent with a couple of our neighboring townships, at least. I didn't research all of them, but I think I did Linden and Webster, and, we're consistent with what they do with this new proposal. But I never could determine what the origin was for that sliding scale, which started at 10%, and I understand that, most lakes are gonna be lakes residential, which would be different in this, but you could have a small, pre-existing, non-conforming RR, that 10% would make sense, if somebody wants to, I don't know, build even a one-car garage.
Mm-hmm.
But the math didn't work out for most of us, I think, when we said, okay, it's declining as the lots get bigger, the numbers get smaller, but then when it's capped, it's something that calculates out for 5 acres. Well, if you have 10 or 20, in the case of Cornman Farms in particular, it would have created a much less than optimal solution. So that's another one of those cases, the two that are before you tonight, we came upon because in real life, something glitched, and ZBA wasn't able to allow the relief in the proper manner. But anyhow, I hope that helps a little bit.
It does.
Do you have any other questions on that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm.
All right,
That
thank you.
helps me, yeah.
And that helped me too. Realize I didn't totally understand it myself. How about you guys? Any questions? So should I call a vote? Okay, Michelle Stambalis,
Yes.
Mara Smith,
Yes.
Gretchen Driscoll,
Yes.
Lonnie Scott,
Yes.
Laura Sanders.
Yes.
Karen Nolte,
Yes.
and myself, Karen Sickinga, yes. So, that's it. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Really appreciate it. Giving your time. It is, yeah, yeah. Okay, now we're gonna move to the General Appropriations Act, and I realized I didn't redistribute the materials from prior months, but I realized that it probably would be useful to actually have the Appropriations Act itself for you guys, because this is in fact what we're approving. So that's just a reprint of what we did last month. And then there's a little bit more information in your supplemental package. You guys asked for a time study from Samantha Edwards and from Michelle Fiesel. And so those are included in there. We'll have them do that for a little bit longer and maybe analyze the results, but hopefully that makes it a little bit more transparent. Also included in the packet at your request was the job description for the two of them, along with the proposed new position. So just to reorient everybody, we have had multiple meetings to discuss the budget, and there are many line items in it. I actually did also reprint the list of capital projects, and I can hand that out to you guys because I know people have asked me questions about that. The two things that we really discussed in January were this my request for a deputy supervisor, which you all recommended I change the title to project coordinator, so I did that. And that's also changed in the budget narrative. And then you asked for some more justification in the form of this time study and the job description, so I provided that to you as well. And just a reminder, we're restructuring the budget this year, so we're not approving the line items necessarily, so that this discussion of the new position is really, it's part of the justification of how I calculated the amount of the budget of the general, so there's a general government category, and I put this position under general government, but we're not approving at that level. We'll be monitoring at that level, but not approving at that level, so. And I don't know if there's any discussion, or. If you decide you're not comfortable with that position, then we could either we could take this General Appropriations Act and reduce the overall general fund expenditure budget by $38,000.
A lot of papers. Well, thank you, there's a lot of information, I think, for
Yeah.
everybody, and I think we're just all looking at that time study really quick, so.
And if anybody wants the list of capital projects, I have it here.
Yeah.
Do you know about that? This is in the budget book. Everybody, I wanted to tell all of you to please bring your budget books back in and give them to Sam, and I'll have her go through them and make sure you have the most recent version, because, every time we had a meeting, in response to requests by the board, we went back and edited, or I went back and edited the narrative and edited some of the content. And then I passed those edited versions out in the budget meetings, but they weren't integrated into your binders. So if you want to have a binder that reflects the latest version of everything, bring it in, and we'll do that for you. It's just in the package.
So is this what are we're discussing right now, the possibility of a project coordinator?
Well, we're approving the budget.
Yeah.
And the budget calculation includes $38,000
For a
so-
project
so-
coordinator.
So the overall expenditure budget includes an increase of $38,000 calculated
Right.
based on.
For 24 hours a week, right, was the 24-hour week office assistant, is that? Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing here.
Yeah, it's probably 24 hours a week.
Okay,
It's not for the office assistant, though, it's for
Right.
a project. It's a budget, we're just increasing our general government budget by $38,000 on these.
Okay, that's-
We're gonna add a little, some staff.
so what is for the project coordinator, what's the amount of hours a week that's being suggested?
24 hours.
24 hours,
And
okay, that's what I thought.
And I based that on, and I'm actually, I should double check the numbers, but I just based it on, originally, I was just trying to restore the deputy supervisor. So you guys all remember, we had a deputy supervisor in the budget for the first couple of years, and somehow that dropped out of the budget. I'm not sure how that happened. And so I thought, I was gonna restore this deputy supervisor, because we've added all these special projects, like, the cleanup days, the plastic film recycling, the Metro Parks Pass program,
Mhm.
farmland and open space. I mean, there's just a lot more. We've expanded our operations a little bit with things that we're doing, and I thought, well, let's just restore this position that dropped out of the budget.
Mhm.
So that was my thinking.
The deputies work at the pleasure of the elected official though, correct? They don't have to, they're not really a staff to the office, they're a staff to the
Right.
Elected official, correct?
That's right, and that's why I think the board asked that we retitle this to a project coordinator position, because the work that was proposed for
Because it
this
makes it sound
position.
like, it makes it sound like in here, it says that because of all of this, that means that the admin team, whoever that is, I don't know who that is that the assistant office manager and the manager?
Right.
Okay, because then that makes it sound like now, because of the deputy treasurer's reduced hours, that means that they have to do more, when in all reality, that's how it's always been. That's always been their job, to perform customer service. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not following you.
Okay, because it says here, it's just like, because of these reduction in hours, that means that the admin team, the office manager and the office assistant, has to now perform more customer services, answering questions and whatever, but that is their jobs.
That's true. So you would like to see that amended? You'd like
Yeah.
to see that statement?
Yeah,
struck
because I
from
mean, I
this?
think that's
I mean,
not really the picture.
Yeah, I understand you. I mean, I think typically though, when you do, admin staff do kind of pick up the slack. So if there were more people present, I mean, you know better than I do. 'cause
I pick up
wasn't
the
there.
slack too, I'm here
Yeah.
4 days a week, all day.
Yeah.
When my busy times are here, so. I do a good job of that.
I have a, so I have a question about the same line, but just, so it also says tax payments,
Where are we? Can somebody?
page 48
Okay,
of the packet.
all right, thanks.
And then if I look at the time study, that is a lot of Michelle's time. Is that a normal,
That's how it's always been.
Absolutely.
that's a normal function of the,
That's what they do in Webster. They have a customer service person at the desk. My desk isn't at the front greeting customers, and that's why we got the cash receiving program with the scanning. That's typical.
But isn't that only during tax time?
It is.
Okay, so this, I don't think this is a true picture
It's
of
not.
a typical cycle.
No, I mean, that's the thing, when you do a time study.
Yeah, I
You
mean, this,
usually do, like, I've been hired to do time studies before, usually you pick different times of the, like, you do a 1-week time study for maybe 1 week a month, or maybe 1 week a quarter or something, because of the seasonal nature of the work. And so this is just a snapshot in time, and I will say also, because I wasn't here, our admin, I mean, Sana did more on the board package than she usually would, because I wasn't here, so you see more, there's a few half hours here and there, and that wouldn't be the case if we did it again in a couple months. So a time study, just, you all asked for a time study, so I asked them to do it so you could get a picture, but it's just a snapshot in
Yeah,
time.
and I want to be clear that even when my deputy treasurer was here working and I was here working, the office managers were still collecting tax payments as a customer service job here.
Right.
And that's how it's always been. So I don't know, I just feel like the way that this board packet was portrayed and the way that Hilani has asked, it's making it sound like this is something that's abnormal.
oh no, that was
Well,
my question was based on the time study. If that's a normal function, to me, that means that we probably do need more coverage. If this is something that they're doing on a regular basis, regardless of the hours.
But we have 2 people here now.
But we have just keep in mind, and we talked about this today, so when we had Abby, that was 40 hours a week. Now we have.
32.
We were
close
Abby
Friday.
wasn't, Abby worked 40 hours a week. She was a full-time position.
That is true.
And then when we hired Sam, we hired at 32 hours a week. And then we added Michelle at 24 hours a week. So we've got 56 hours a week, so we've increased from 40 to 56, so that's adding 2 days a week. And one of those days, so what used to happen, they each get their 8 hours a month of paid time off or whatever, or their pro rata time off, so about a quarter of that extra time is taken up with just covering for each other. So the old situation was that we didn't have coverage when the admin was gone, right, and we all covered for that person. So, and I would be happy to strike that, that was an error on my part, and I'm sorry about that, and I didn't mean to make you feel like your work was invisible.
Okay.
But and we talked about this a little bit today, that there was work there's work that Sam is performing, and I think most notably and visibly, the IT management was, there, the filings in the basement, there's basic office management work that is getting done now that is consuming really this extra time. So the extra time that we've added with these 16 additional hours a week that we have is really going to improving the management, the basic management of the office. We're upgrading the IT systems, but even when they're upgraded, we still need somebody to manage them, make sure that they remain up to date, make sure that equipment gets replaced as it ages or breaks. Filing is a continual set of work, always has to be done, and so on. And what I see, Sam is also, and we talked about this too, she's actively managing the boards and committees. I think that's work that wasn't really getting done before, and she's serving as a liaison to everybody that serves on those boards and committees. So I've added work on that little team of two, that 56 hours a week. We're adding in, we've created a little bit of capacity for them to do more than the customer service that is really required of the person that's sitting there at the front desk. We're also managing the basic administrative function of the office. And then in addition to that, the basic administrative function of the office, we've also added a number of programs that are for the direct benefit of township residents that aren't really the responsibility of the executive team and aren't really the responsibility of the administrative team. And that's the missing function that I'm trying to create capacity to fulfill. And I think we are fortunate to have a very active and engaged board, but I don't know that in the, we're doing, community cleanup day. It's all these things that I've listed out in the staff position, in the position description. These are ongoing services that we're offering to the residents, that we have the tax dollars to provide administrative support. I mean, I'm using the word administrative support, but let's say to coordinate those new things that we're doing. The community movie night, the cleanup days, the plastic film recycling. I see one of our plastic film recycling volunteers here right now. The cemetery cleanup, the metro. The newest one is the Metro Parks Pass. That is. We can't get the excellent administrative management. I want to see it have excellent administrative management and excellent front desk FaceTime. And I think with the 56 hours we can do that. But if we want to also have excellence in these new projects and programs, I don't think that our admin team has the capacity to add all that and do the great job that we want them to do with that. So that is the origin of the request.
If I may. What I wanted to see was not a time study, but what does our office manager and office assistant do? And I'm asking this just so I have an idea of
So
what their qualifications are.
no.
Okay, that's in here.
Page
because
51 and page 52, remember I told you that we worked on job descriptions for them? And their job
Okay.
descriptions say what
I must
they're,
have looked over that just a minute.
Yeah.
And I asked that for a reason, because I'm seeing on the time study, and I do appreciate seeing a time study, but for instance, I've struggled in my election again this year where ink wasn't ordered, paper wasn't ordered, and the postage machine was not loaded efficiently for ballots and voter applications. And then I see there isn't a page number, but the time study for Samantha from 3 to 4:30 with FOIA assistance. I called Michelle and Sam into my office because I had what's called the accident report. It's a audit that I have to do yearly. It's a fairly large report, and the W-9s weren't current. any proof of insurance, updated contract signed. So what I wanted to see, and if it's in here, I apologize, I'll look at that really quickly, but those were things that, who does what? That was my big issue, especially before talks with bringing another person into the office. Who does what first? Let's do what we're doing well.
And I think that those things that you're talking about are the responsibility of the office administrator or the office manager. And she needs to be trained or told something, because this is her first year, so. But
I looked over this page, I
But the
apologize.
project coordinator would not be a person that would be doing things like providing 1099s or whatever it is to cut to contractors. And, that is office, that's the kind of office management work that I think can fall by the wayside if you have just one person who sits at the front desk and has to get up and serve all the customers that come in. So that's why we have the two admins, one really focused on customer service, the other on office management or administrative management kinds of activities. Laura?
It sounds like we're getting a little off track, as if it sounds like folks are feeling critiqued about does our current staff do, and the elected and administrative officials do, and who does what. It's clear that a lot of positive work is going on, and I don't think this should get sidetracked into like a critique of who's doing what. It's clear that we have these important projects that we've all agreed on and we are excited about, and they do need support. I also think that personally, Karen, I feel like you are fiscally thoughtful and have been pretty, and are more likely to be kind of conservative in your thinking about the finances here. And I trust that if you feel like you need that help to pull off these projects, that you're not going to ask for something where our funds are going to be wasted. So I appreciate you asking about this. I think the change to a project coordinator title is important, because that person then would focus on kind of the umbrella, the overseeing of these projects. But obviously, everyone is working really, really hard. And the time study just shows me that, like, all the tasks that need to be happening are happening, and you still need help for the new things that we've agreed to do. So I feel like I want to support your need for that and get it.
Yeah, and I mean,
Support
all
it.
I was trying to say here was that the team that we have, the two that we have, are not doing the project work. I wasn't trying to take anything away from the great work that you guys and your deputies do, but I see them running around like crazy all day, really trying to manage this office and give really high levels of, I see the two admins trying to give really high levels of customer service to people, and
I know,
Sam,
we
and-
definitely see a difference. I mean, in
and-
the last few months, it does seem very chaotic and like it wasn't before, I felt like it was very managed and jobs were getting done, things were stacked, you know what I mean? So it's like, it is different than when I started, for sure.
But because the whole focus was on customer service, I think, before, and then the underlying work of, that's, the live stream, for example, has gone down over and
Yeah,
over
no,
in
I
every
agree.
meeting. Well, why, we found out what's the issue there? We've got 15-year-old equipment and no one knew it. So we're adding work, we're adding the basic administrative work, and that is consuming some of Sam's time. The administrative management work that wasn't happening before is happening now, and that's consuming Sam's time.
All right.
As it should. I mean, that's what an office manager or office administrator, and I say office manager is often a little bit more narrow in scope, but an office administrator it needs to be managing all these things, the filing system, the IT system, the HR, that's HR is, like you were saying today, making sure that everybody has filled out all the forms, knows when their meeting time is, knows when has their email address and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I also think that Sam didn't get appropriate training either when she started, just because, she didn't have Abby, the former office manager, to kind of show her. Kim did come in once, but, just the functions of the office and how everything works, I think that was probably hard for her to come into, not really knowing much about everything, so I think she's still catching up,
Oh, sure.
to understanding.
Well, she hasn't even been there a year, so.
Right, no, and this is no fault to Sam. What I'm saying is I think, it was hard for her to come in also because,
Yeah.
there really wasn't a transition. There
Well,
wasn't
that's
really
true, but the issues, some of the things that I'm looking at are really much older than that. I mean, they are older than, you and I talked about this. I think Abby's function was really on getting the packages out, getting the board packages out, and then serving the public. That was her job. And so all the office management work, I just don't think it was in her work package, really.
Yeah, I guess it was just, it's been tough for me because it's just the transition of everything wasn't very clear, you know what I mean? Because we went from Abby and Kim and how they functioned, and then we hired Sam on the premise of like that same function, at least that's what I thought, and I could have been wrong, so we hired Sam, and then all of a sudden, it all became completely different, and that's where I got lost in like who is doing what and what's appropriate for me to ask for
Well,
her,
that's,
or
let's have this conversation offline and,
Yeah, sure, well, we did today, and
Yeah,
that's why I was
yeah,
wondering, did
yeah.
you still want the project coordinator?
Absolutely, because to me, the project coordinator has nothing to do with any of this. The project coordinator is doing work that is not in scope for I feel that we've added a number of programs and projects, and we've added no capacity to do that work. And we have the fiscal capacity to do it, so we have the money. And typically when a legislative body adds a program or a project, they delegate that work to a program coordinator of some kind who executes the work. It's not an expectation that the existing staff cadre will just be able to absorb that added work. And so I'm just asking the board to recognize that we've added a number of projects and programs, that those projects and programs take work. We're very fortunate to have been able to get that work done fairly well. I'm not sure that that's a sustainable model for the future, and if we want to keep these things, and this proposed budget that I'm putting forward does include all those same projects that we added. They're all funded in the budget. There's an assumption that those are going to continue. I'm saying if we're going to continue and operationalize all these projects, we should have somebody who's overseeing them and making sure they're done well. And that's what so it's a little bit different than what are the office staff. And as far as everything changing when I came in, we can talk more about that offline, but that's probably on me because I didn't know how things were before.
Right. That's what I think we've all, there's been, so much turnover and stuff that I think we've all kind of gotten confused with.
But I was trying to demonstrate with these 3 job descriptions that these are not similar jobs.
Right.
Karen, what were you going to say?
Well, as you talk about sustainability, obviously, everybody recognizes a lot of these projects are things that I work on. And trust, I by no means really want to be the project coordinator job. That is, I have never asked for that, nor do I really want it. But there are other projects to move forward where I have to bail on some projects because it's taking over too much of my life. And as a trustee, you shouldn't be working as much as I'm working. And so I am in full support of this position to be able to pass some things on. Once they get up to a level, then it becomes a maintenance level, and somebody's got to maintain them. And I kind of see a trustee's role as launching and getting it going, and then once it goes to maintenance, it needs to go to maintenance. Just like right now, we're looking at MailChimp, and we're looking at automating in the loop. So it should not be with one person. It should, if something happens to me, what happens? So
Right.
Sam and I now are starting to explore how do we automate our email process and everything. So a lot of these projects, they're ongoing for a long time, and I'm telling you, it's a lot. I know how much I work, and I know there's still things in the hopper to go with, so I fully support. For $38,000 a year, when we have it, it's like a no-brainer to me. And Karen needs the support.
Some of the, when we were talking about the strategic, when we revisited the strategic plan recently, what was it, within this last year, we talked, and I can't remember exactly the terms that you used, was it core functions and permissive functions, is
Yeah.
that right?
Mandated functions.
Mandated function and permissive functions, right? So I feel like the mandated functions are getting taken care of, right? And then we have all of these permissive functions, but then I hear everybody saying, oh, there's just so much to do, so much, but they're permissive functions. And I feel like that's how the residents look at that too, where some of these things, some people may think they're necessary and others may not think they're necessary, right? And that's where we are as elected officials trying to decide, you know, how much do we do, because they are just permissive functions. Does that make sense? I feel like we do a lot, you know, that we've done a lot of really, really great things, and I mean, we've only been in here for 3 years, but I would like to see us, you know, slow down a little. If people are overworked, it's okay for us to slow down just a little bit. We have a land preservation, you know, going, we have roads, we have.
Yeah, but I would say, and we talked about this too, because we have an operating surplus of, so we've set aside very generous fund balances as well as an annual appropriation for our strategic purposes and for our capital purposes and emergency funds and all that, and we still have an operating fund surplus. I feel like we have an ethical obligation to deploy those funds because there's a minimum tax level for townships, there just is. So if we're collecting more money than we're spending, then we should be doing a Metro Parks program. We should be doing a community cleanup day. We shouldn't say, well, we can't do this because it's too much for us. We should say, we can do this because we have the money and the capacity, and the money and the capacity is represented in that operating surplus. So if we were out of money and we were making choices because we didn't have enough, it was either this or that, then it would be a very different conversation. But what we're talking about now, if we did decline this position, then instead of a $250,000 annual operating fund surplus, we have a $300,000 or $290,000. And to me, that's not fair to the residents. They could have a better recycling program. They could have a better cemetery program. These are all strategic initiatives. The community participated in it. They said they want these things. We have the money to pay for it. I don't understand why a legislative body would approve an expansion of services like this and then not provide the staff to support, not want to do it well, not want to do it right. I just don't understand it. And we talked today, and I have to say, disclaim for myself, because I probably won't hire this person myself, because I think everybody knows I'm going to run for trustee and not supervisor again. So I'm not advocating for this for myself personally, but I think it's the right thing for Dexter Township. I think it's an ethical use of tax dollars, and I think if we're going to do these things, we should do it well, and we should resource it. Unless we're making choices, unless if we had to cut that 250, if we had to cut the deputy treasurer because we couldn't afford it, I wouldn't be asking for it. I would be saying, let's cut out these, we can't afford these programs. We should not be doing them. We don't have the resources for it. But we do have the resources, and the people want it, and they're enjoying it.
We do now, but
And-
then what? I mean, what if we, I don't know.
I also think I think we've done a good job reaching out into the community and telling people what's going on, and people are asking for things, and they're making recommendations of what to do. We're listening to the community, and we're taking it back to them. Do we just say, oh, nope, we can't,
We don't want to do it.
we don't want to do it, we hear you, but we don't want to do it? We can't just stop. I mean,
But I understand what the treasurer is saying. We can do so much, and if we all don't understand what is going on, we're sitting on this board wondering what is going on. We are doing things, and we're not doing everything well. Now, what I want to say, but I'm very excited to do things, but you've got to jump in, you've got to do it, and you've got to do it well. And then that's sustainable, so you go to your next project. Same thing happens, and then you do it well. Now, right now, the point I made to the supervisor in our meeting today was the roads. The roads concern me. I live on a rural road. I'm familiar with aggregate. I'm familiar with all of the trucks, if it is a very highly utilized road or if there's 50 cars going down it a year. These roads are gonna break down. Weather, elements, grading. I don't even know what the maintenance is gonna be to continue these roads. That's my thought process on this, doing something well.
That's a lot of money.
And then moving on to the next subject. I mean, and that is just how I
Well,
feel about
Can
it, right?
I want to just answer the roads question, and then I think I want to say, I think everybody said their piece, and I think we know how everybody stands on this. I do want to say the roads, and this has been shared before with the board, but, you know, we've got a 5-year plan to catch up on the roads and bring all the roads into good condition, and that has cost us about $500,000 a year. Once that first 5 years is done, then the ongoing maintenance cost of that is gonna be $100,000 a year, and that's a budget number that I worked out with the road commission. So that $500,000 is in the capital budget this year, it'll be in the capital budget next year, and it goes against our fund balances. The ongoing maintenance cost of $100,000, that will go against this operating surplus, so it will be a request, not in this year's budget, but in future budget years, we'll be asking to increase the scope of our operating budget by $100,000 to pay the ongoing maintenance cost of the roads, which will reduce that operating surplus from $250,000 to $150,000. So the money, I totally agree with you, and as I think everybody knows, roads are sort of my passion and my thing.
Absolutely.
And I would not be proposing a budget that didn't leave sufficient funds for roads maintenance.
And I appreciate that, but I know the economy, it fluctuates. I mean, everything fluctuates. I mean, land preservation, that was my passion. But the community went ahead and said, hey, we will fund that, where we are responsible for these roads. And something amazing has happened with these roads. Because I would say the majority of us live on a rural road, and it was devastating with the amount of car maintenance and potholes and not taking care of these roads. And that's,
But if the economy declines and our revenue becomes more constrained, then we do two things. We use our fund balances to smooth over the bumps, and then we reduce the scope of our operation. That's what we have to do. We don't scale back we are still obligated to utilize the full value of the tax revenue that's provided to us to give value in real time to the residents. When we plan for times of fiscal constraint, those are difficult decisions, and it's hard and it's painful, but we're not there right now. That's not our situation right now. We may have to cut the Metro Parks program. We may not be able to spend $100,000 on roads in the future. We may, those will be hard decisions in the future, but they're not really relevant to the current conversation. And I do feel like we've all kind of said our piece, and we've talked about this multiple months. I mean, is there anybody that hasn't? Gretchen or Lonnie?
I haven't really heard, I don't feel like I know what we're there.
I mean, I'm trying to understand I find myself, I feel currently supportive because I filled in for Karen for a week while she was in Mexico. And I thought to myself, why don't we have staff doing this? Why is this a job that only the trustee is taking care of? And the answer is the staff is doing all of these other things.
Yeah.
And we want to have these good projects. So I'm trying to understand better because I'm not in the office every day. And so if there are concerns from two folks who are in the office every day, I want to understand better what those real concerns are. I hear potential fiscal concerns in general, which could be long-term, but my thought on that is that we're either gonna find something else to expend those dollars on, or it's going to stay there and potentially not be used this year, which maybe that's what folks want, but then it just goes into the reserves. And my initial reaction to that is, we're doing all these great programs, and for the benefit of the residents, we should use it for the benefit of the residents. But I also, as I hear the conversation, I wonder if we go to that mindset more of scarcity, where we want to preserve, which I understand is a thing folks might want to do, what are the things that we cut? And are those decisions that we're gonna have to make? Are we gonna stop doing cemetery cleanup and maintenance? Are we gonna stop doing the local roads stuff? Are we gonna stop the Metro Parks program? And I think the answer to all those questions, if we're serious, is no. But currently what we expect is just that Trustee Nolte is gonna do it. And so,
I don't think anybody expects that.
Well,
that who does it if she doesn't,
well, I
would
wouldn't
be my
say-
question.
Well, I wouldn't say that we expect that Trustee Nolte is going to do it. I would say instead, we approved the execution of these programs without approving any staff to do the programs. Not a typical behavior of a legislative body, I might add. You know, usually when legislators add programs, they should make sure that there's administrative capacity to do them. So we approved the programs, but we didn't approve any administration for the programs, and so Karen just stepped in to do them because there wasn't anybody to do them.
Right, I feel like we should have
Yeah.
done that in reverse, like made sure we had.
We
this-
probably should, yes, we should have, but we didn't, and now I'm trying to address that in this year's budget. This is the first time I've done a budget, and I'm trying to address that issue.
But yeah, those are the things that I'm trying to understand. So, and I'm being serious. I'm not here every day, so I do want to hear where other folks are coming
As a person
from.
that works in the office, just a couple minutes, okay, am I fiscally responsible? Yes, probably more so than what have you. But when it comes to doing things well, my issue is we hired Sam, and Sam, I assumed was gonna be our new Abby, right? She was leaving, she was moving, Sam came in. She was gonna be our office manager, individual. Well, she did a fantastic job, and we brought Michelle in because we had more need. I personally thought it was a little much, but then when I saw that Sam was keeping busy, and Sam was assisting with, you know, the newsletter, and Sam does a lot of things that we don't know what she's doing. Then there's the office manager, who right now, I don't know if either of them know exactly what their function is. So that's what concerns me, is I'm bringing in a coordinator, then we're gonna be, now we have a coordinator, and what is this coordinator now doing?
But I want to
That's
say
what
again
concerns
that
me.
these office staff don't have anything to do with the coordinator position. So I personally, they report to me, I feel like they know what they're gonna do and they know what their job duties are, they wrote it. But that's a whole separate discussion, not related to this
So I
addition.
just asked hypothetically in the office, and I'm just answering your question. For the second election now, when I don't have ink and a postage machine, and I can't just run myself up to Staples and pick it up, but I put it in QVF and I'm gonna send a ballot out on this day,
Well,
and
the
that
issue,
thing has to be postmarked on that day, and I don't have the resources that I need to perform my job,
yeah, so
that's a problem.
just so everybody understands what happened with the postage, because we added the Metro Parks Pass program and we mailed so many things out unexpectedly, we created a change in the use rate of the postage.
It was ink and postage.
Yeah, ink and postage, that caused us to run out of postage.
Yeah, I feel like we're just doing things and there's not a whole lot of thought beforehand,
Or
you
the
know? And then it
communication.
just, no communication and everybody just.
It's not that I don't love these programs, it's not that I don't wanna support my community. I took myself out of my business to run for office, to support my community, to bring things to my community. I mean, it wasn't financially smart for me to do this, but I really had a passion to come here. So now that I'm here, I wanna do things right.
So, do you guys wanna make a motion? Go ahead, Tricia.
I just like to make a couple comments. So I think we all, kind of back to what Laura said, first of all, I'm the new kid on the block. So not only do I not spend time in the office, but I'm a newbie. And I kind of hear some tension and frustration and some possible misunderstanding. You know, I believe that we all strive to do the best for our community. I think every individual on this board, I really enjoyed working with every individual on this board because I know we have very similar values about doing the best for our community. And the question is really about this position, which actually, and that's why I've been listening, because this was been the budget in the past, and now it's like, which should it be in the budget? So I'm really kind of on the fence. But I would really like to see our board work together to solve this and not come, you know, like have this continued tension. Because I feel like there's some kind of missed piece. Like, I just think there's some misunderstanding. So, and you know, I will just say, Karen, like, you've done this great job. Like, there's a job description on each of, you know, I think you've done a really good job on saying why we need this position, and that there are all these projects that would, you know, need to be addressed. I mean, I think that has been a great job, and so I'm really kind of in this quandary, and like, part of me, you're gonna really get upset about this, but like, is there a way we could do like a work session and just like kind of like talk about this a little more? Is that not gonna be productive? I mean, are we gonna be just stuck in a place? Because right now, if it's been in the budget the past 2 years, I will go for it because you need it, you're the supervisor.
Well, it
and-
wasn't in this last year's budget, it was in the budget a couple of years ago.
Right,
And then it dropped out of the budget.
right,
So I wanna be clear, this is not a carryover from last year's
Okay.
budget, and that's why I called it out, because
okay,
we took it out of the budget previously.
okay.
And
So,
so last year it wasn't in the budget, but it was in the budget our first 2 years.
yeah,
So I was just trying to restore it, and I kind of feel like I just opened a can of worms. I mean, to me, it felt pretty common sense. We've added a whole bunch of projects and programs, and we didn't add any staff to administer them, so we should do that. But it turns out, what I don't think I understood was that a lot of things have changed under me, and I don't think I knew that, and these guys are confused about the administration of the
Well, I
office.
mean, everybody's been very, very busy. It's very hard for us to communicate well. And, you know, we haven't had, Karen was out of town. We haven't had many executive meetings. So and Michelle's busy with elections. I'm busy with taxes, you know. I don't know 100% all the time what's going on, you know, and then we get to, I don't know. Everything has kind of changed. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just like, I need to catch up with everything, you know, and
Yeah.
have better communication within the office before I can think about adding new things. You know, I want to get a hold of what we have going on already. That's how I feel. That's what's comfortable to me. I am not completely opposed to having a project manager in the future if and when we have stability
Right.
for a little period of time to say, hey, let's assess
Well,
now.
Can I just say
I
one-
think the question before us right now is, are we approving, you know, the revenue is what it is and so on, you know, but I think everybody's comfortable with all the elements of the budget, except right now I'm proposing expenditures of $1,238,345. If we want to reduce that budget, we can just reduce it to $1.2 million and be done with this discussion and.
so, because I was gonna ask that, if we
Or
do
we
that,
could- or
can
we
we come back later and continue this conversation? I think the challenge we have in the room right now is we have an presidential election, we have a fire millage, we have tax payments, we have, you know, new staff, like there's just, so, because I hear, like, and I'm new, so I get it, because I'm kind of like, woo, you know, again, like, I'm doing that a lot these days. So my question was gonna be, because I kind of ramble, if we just voted to not have that position, can we, in a month or two, like, continue this conversation and work through the different moving parts? Because, you know, we just had this big town hall building renovation, and say, in a month or two, like, we want to add this to the budget.
Well,
I
we're
asked
just,
that today.
we're
Okay.
just removing all we would be doing is reducing, all we're approving today is the General Appropriations Act. And so all that would be is reducing the overall expenses from $1,238,000 to $1,200,000. And then that would mean that new position wasn't part of the calculation anymore.
I would move that. I'm gonna just make that motion.
And I'm in a second.
I don't understand.
I'd like to make a different option. Why don't we just approve the budget, including the 38,000, and then 4 months from now, readdress the project, or 3 months from now? But then the budget's in place, we're not making changes, but you're not gonna go out and hire tomorrow.
The budget can get passed without it and then amend it later if we wanted to. It's the same thing.
Well, it's just a question of how much operating surplus we have in the budget. Yeah, do we have a $300,000 surplus? I mean, again, I have to say again, to me, that doesn't, it feels like we're doing something that doesn't make common sense. We added all these programs, we've got a big budget surplus.
It seems to me like we need the help now,
we have
soon.
We have people saying, you, Michelle, for example, saying that we've got problems with some of the programs that we've added. You were talking about the film plastic is building up and we don't have, so.
Well, the film plastic was different, it was a volunteer.
Right,
And
but,
that's what it was always labeled, was volunteer.
But we
And the
don't-
school was supposed to pick it up twice a week, and then I
Right,
don't
but-
believe that's happening.
but we need to have somebody who manages that and make sure that the volunteers come and that they get their reimbursements and that, and it's not running up to your standards, right? And there was something else not running up to your standards. And the solution is not adding people to help with those things, but I'm fine.
I just want to get
I
a
just
sec,
wanna
we
say-
have, there
yeah.
was a motion and a second, so I think we have to.
Are we in
Okay,
discussion?
Yeah, are we in, okay, so there's a motion and
What
a
is the
second.
motion?
It's to reduce the budget by 38,000. So
Which
we're-
would do what? Because I don't understand
It's
it.
to amend the proposed General Appropriations Act to reduce the general fund estimated expenditures on page 2 from $1,238,345 to $1,200,000.
And that means what about this
That we don't
position?
have any money in the budget for the position.
Okay, then I don't agree with that.
Okay, so do we want to, so
Right.
let's take a vote. So I'll start with you, Maris.
No.
No, do you mean yes?
Yeah. Wow.
The
I
motion,
think I'm not
yes.
the only one.
Yes, to
Reduce the
Reduce
budget.
the budget. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Lonnie,
No.
Karen,
No.
Michelle,
Yes.
Gretchen,
Yes.
Laura.
No.
So we're 3-3 and I'm the tie-breaking vote. I'm gonna vote yes. I mean, I'm voting no, so I'm voting against the
Wait,
proposal. So I'm voting no.
okay,
I reject the motion to reduce the budget.
okay.
So then do I hear a different motion?
I
So
make,
that failed.
I'll make a motion to pass the, I don't remember the number,
1.23835, I support it.
Resolution 24,
resolution 24,
24-2.
As
Oh.
presented.
as presented.
What is that?
Resolution
I support.
24-2, as presented.
Support that and
Oh, there it is.
Resolution to
It's this,
put it in.
This, that.
just to pass the budget.
As presented. Okay, do I have a second for that
I
motion?
support that.
Okay, so I can't even remember who I started with before.
Do you discussion or no?
No, we've already had plenty of discussion. I'll start with you, Lonnie.
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Maris,
No,
Michelle,
No.
Gretchen,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and myself, Karen, yes. So that passed by a vote of 5-2. 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the approval of the contract with Ameriscan. This is one of the items that I think is kind of a basic function of a well-managed office, which is to have your documents, especially because we function like an archive, so our documents are foiable. We need our documentation for building permits and so on. I would like to see, we have, what I realize is that there are several different file cabinets that are not orderly, basically, and we also have upgraded our BSNA software so that we now have the capacity to attach files to BSNA. So if we digitize our files, then the documents, it will save a lot of staff time, it will we're gonna make sure that we don't have documents lost or going astray or missing documents for FOIA request or whatever. And we're gonna be attaching these digitized documents to BSNA. And so this is a request for a budget amendment and approval to sign a contract with Ameriscan to do this file digitization. And the reason I put it on as an action item instead of a discussion item, as I normally would, is because we just like to get started with it as soon as we can.
I just have a quick question. I know that when we had our original discussion around, I believe it was paid interns, that this was one of the projects, but I know that we've discussed at previous meetings that we were having trouble getting interns.
Yeah.
So does this supplant that?
Well, we didn't get the School of Information interns that we were hoping for. We got one planning intern, and because we don't have as much intern capacity as we hoped that we would have, we're gonna use Ameriscan to do the scanning, and then we hired one planning intern who's only here for 2 months, so she'll be here for 2 months, 10 hours a week, and she is gonna be the person that checks basically connects the digitized documents to BSNA. So Ameriscan scans all the documents and saves them into folders that are labeled, basically like the labels on the folders that they're scanning. And then the intern receives the scanned documents and files them in the database, in the correct place in the database. So the intern cost is going to be significantly lower.
Thank you.
I move to approve the contract.
A second. Me.
Months.
Is there any more discussion on that? Okay, I'll start with you, Gretchen.
Yes.
Laura Sanders.
Yes.
Michelle Stamoulos.
Yes.
Karen Nolte.
Yes.
Lonnie
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Maris Metz.
Yes.
Myself, Karen Second, yes. Yay, this is great, and this is actually gonna, I think, result in real efficiencies for the staff, kind of make things a little bit, create less work for them, so. Okay, so now we're on to discussion items, page 62, and I did just want to make clear that, and I'll be changing the format next month, but the only part of this that really comes from me is the write-up, the overview of the finance, and then the budget variance report, which starts on page 70. This report, this one that looks like this is my document. The transactional report comes from Michelle. She's responsible for the general ledger. And then typically we also have a treasurer's report in there, which comes from Maris, and that's reporting on our investments, the status of the investment.
And that got left out this month.
And that got left out this month, so.
But I did deliver it, just so everyone knows.
Which I didn't deliver, so these are the reports that will go in.
We did deliver, Michelle, we did get, we did.
That's right here.
Did you put them in?
Yeah.
She said she didn't put them in. I didn't see them.
She did, yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's in there. So did anybody have any questions? If you all remember, we had this as, we were having this as a consent agenda item, but we moved into a discussion item just in case anybody had
This is
questions.
the revenue and expenditures report that I will submit. The check disbursement report is in the packet.
Well, the revenue, that one that you just passed out is the same as the Excel document, except it's missing the forecast.
The variance, this one.
Yeah, it doesn't have the year-end forecast, or, so this one that Michelle is handing out is just a duplicate.
But I would feel comfortable being the individual to put the financials and transaction into the board packet, just so they come from the clerk's office.
Okay.
Thank you.
So are there any questions on the finances?
I'm just confused. Are there other documents, or this is?
No, Michelle just passed out the revenue and expense report, which
Okay.
is basically the budget variance report, which, it's the budget variance report minus the forecast.
Got it. Thank you.
No questions?
Is the, is the $4,500 to Pitney Bowes all postage?
Yeah.
That's an odd amount, like it's just.
Well, it's postage and,
Yeah, or whatever.
yeah.
Well, I think we're making a lot of money in interest. Good job, Mayor.
Yeah.
Did they put the new one in there?
Variance, I usually look at the variance, that's.
Yeah,
where
it's
I-
just in the variance
The
report.
new one though, yeah, because I did just recently do a,
It shows on the budget variance report on the, you know, it shows in the budget.
no, I know that, but I recently did, I invested with Multi-Bank and I put a T-note and that's already earned
Yeah.
$34,000, but I don't think that I can put that in yet. So that's why I was asking which one, are you talking about Michigan Class or Multi-Bank?
It's Michigan class.
Michigan,
Yeah.
Michigan.
Oh, yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
gonna be plenty more here in the next report, so,
Nice, good job.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's a long
A
time
bit when
coming.
money makes money.
Yeah, we had to move fast, because it's gonna change, but we're locked in, Dexter Township's locked in now at over 5% for the next 2 years, which is gonna be a blessing,
Yeah.
so.
So if there's no other questions, then we'll move on to the Waterways Committee, which again, this is just a discussion item, it's not a decision. So Karen, what page?
That would be page.
That's
Oh,
page
here it is.
85.
85, right. The concept of the Waterways Committee is to link together all our waterways. One of our pillars of our master plan is our environmental stewardship, and water plays a very important part in Dexter Township, whether it be our lakes or our rivers, or even our drinking water if we want to address that. But there's many issues, and there's many fractions around the township working on some of the same projects at different levels, anywhere from beginner level to experience. And the purpose of waterways is to put those people together in a room so they can talk, they can educate themselves, they can work together to go after grant monies for our lakes to be testing or working on invasive species. So it's really just creating a foundation of residents that live on the waterways in conjunction with Huron River Watershed, and to start the conversations of preserving our water and our shorelines. And ultimately, a year, 2 years down the road, I don't know what the timeline is for them to make recommendations on ordinance changes. I know we've been approached by some other townships to support some of their ordinances by us doing the same thing, but I think we have to, in many ways, pave our own road and find out what's best for Dexter Township. And it's just the starting and forming of that. It's putting people together to share their information.
And is this different than, like, because a lot of the lakes already have their own associations, so would it be a joining of the associations?
It would be.
Okay.
It would be. It's taking, we all know Craig Keevy over in Portage, but he doesn't live in Dexter, that's a problem, but Mark does. They operate at probably the highest. North Lake's probably has been testing for 20 years. Silver Lake just got their SAD last year, we approved that. Gretchen, you know Half Moon, we're in infancy stages. The watershed would like us to all talk, we already have PFAS issues. That's becoming, and that will become more apparent. The sewer system has to do some more testing, so that's gonna be a big topic in our township, in the next year or so. As it is already in Portage, because they can't eat their fish. So far in Dexter, we can still eat our fish. So yes, uniting all the waterways to talk and to educate each other.
I mean, I have a question,
Mhm.
which is, does this have to be as formal as a committee of Dexter Township? I mean, couldn't it just be a kind of informal? I mean, could you start by just getting by inviting the lake associations to have the chairs get together and just have them kind of talk informally and not sort of formalize it so quickly, and then have, if they feel that there's a value added by an association with Dexter Township, have them come to us, and,
Well, there's no reason we can't do that.
because
I
then
don't know if it will have the same, sometimes it's nice to have a little weight behind something when they're going after grants. So it'd be hard if you have 5 or 6 lakes going after grant money, do we make 5 or 6 applications, one for each lake, or do we do it as a township to go after funding and then earmark where it goes? I mean, those are questions that are gonna come up in 6 months or something.
Yeah,
And so I guess that's why the initial concept of some head body that's gonna organize these 6 or 7 people.
And the Watershed Council will also be involved?
Oh, yeah,
with
they
it too
want
as
in,
well?
oh,
See,
yeah.
and I wonder if the Watershed Council would actually
That's-
lend their
Right.
resource, like,
That's what
They
I was
might, yeah.
thinking.
I mean, just in light of, let's try to slow things down, could we sort of express support for this idea without actually taking it on as at least not taking it on right away as a project of Dexter Township, but let these guys just encourage them to start meeting, offer our space for them to meet, and then let them decide whether, or let them come to us if they want us to formalize it into a committee because they think it would help them get grants or whatever.
Yes, that would be my question, but I am, again, like the new kid on the block, and we're starting a Half Moon Lake Association, and, I joined the Michigan Lakes and Streams even before I lived on a lake, because I want to learn about how to be an environmental steward of our community, and, I think there are, we have some experts in our community, like Mark Tykert, I think would be willing to come and talk to us, and I know in our strategic plan, we talked about the multi-lake sewer, and that is an issue, and I keep hearing that, but I don't really know what that means, and so I'm wondering if there's a way for our board to have like a learning session on some of this before we do a deeper commitment to a committee. Like, what's already going on out there, and is there another way to do it besides having a committee? Because to me, it kind of feels like more government, more layers, and I'm not into like just doing it. So.
I don't see it as I guess my visualization of this is informal, and that's why not to become a board, not to make all the but to stay a committee, stay a place they can meet, earmark a time, and have them have a home base to talk. And, there's a whole lot going over on Portage with Craig. I mean, he's doing woody habitat preservation of shorelines. I recently filed, and I put it in a memo or last month's update, we filed for a grant because Dingle's office reached out to us. I forget the grant name.
Community something, yeah.
It wasn't the community fund one, I forget what it was right now, I don't have it with me. But there were dollars available to Dexter Township. Well, we don't have anybody that leads our lakes to say, hey, let's go after this, so I called Craig. And Craig helped write it, and if we do get it, it will happen on a Dexter Township shore. And it's building protective woody habitat protection for shorelines. And he would do that in a Dexter Township area. But we don't have anybody looking out for that right now. We don't have that organization to say, oh, Silver Lake, you've got, 4,000 feet of lakefront that needs protected. Half Moon has how much over on the state side? And make recommendations to I would think a lot of it would be educational to residents, How do you protect your shoreline? What do you do about the PFAS issue? What do you do about your fertilizers? I mean, it's just a massive education, and part of putting it under the township umbrella is using the township media, whether it's In the Loop, newsletter, or our Facebook, to help educate people. It just gives it a little more body to move it forward. But I don't see it as a formal thing to make a lot of recommendations, but more of a self-teaching, and that's what we need. We need the experience of some of these people.
I think,
It reminds me of the educational committee that we pulled together for farmland preservation, and that one, of course, we had another goal, which was to eventually create the board and a formalized program, which wouldn't be the mission of this one, but to me, it does require leadership, I think, to pull something together. If that leadership isn't already there by the Huron watershed council? Like, I'm a little confused as to what do they do? How is it different, what they do, what we would do?
Well, I talked to the Watershed Council person, Chris Olson, who's also a trustee in Haverhill
Yeah,
Township.
Chris Olson.
And they love this idea, but I didn't, and what they love is the idea of creating communication between lake associations. And that makes me feel like maybe the Watershed Council would be interested in
They
kind of
may be
sponsoring
interested,
or organizing
and
this.
that's fine, but can we
Yeah,
use, can we use Dexter Township resources to do the educational? Can we, that's where the Dexter Township leadership, the banner, I'm not saying we have to take it on by, definitely don't want to chair it, I don't want that, but I want these people to come together to start talking, to get all our lakes on the same page.
Yeah.
Some just have vast experience and some we're in our infancy stages. And we're not even addressing the small lakes like the Pickerels and Crooked and all those little ones, 4 miles in our jurisdiction. We're not even talking about those 3 or 4
I'm
lakes.
just wondering if we could facilitate information without having to do a committee, like how, on our website or,
That could be, but
other things.
somebody still needs
But
to,
then, yeah.
somebody's gotta take the banner
Coordinates that.
and link
Right.
these people up and get them to the commitment and do that. And the watershed wants to work with us, there's no doubt about that, but they also want to do it because it's under a township banner. And even, isn't it Hamburg that reached out?
Yeah,
to
but
you
what do
that-
you mean by under a township, like, what do you think?
To have the leadership of them. It's to have the leadership of the township to make this an important thing to the residents. And that helps bring all these bodies together. I mean, I can call Craig, I can call the Silver Lake guys, I can call the North Lake guys and say, hey, you want to meet on Tuesday? It's not going to have the same as, hey, we're putting together this, maybe an informal committee to talk about all this. And that's all it is. It's not, we're not asking to come in and make ordinances now and do all that kind of stuff. That's so far down the road, but do we need some? Absolutely.
I've done a few informal things in this, where, like with the Northwest Passage Trail or where we kind of convene people for a meeting, and we don't say this is gonna be a committee or, but we say, hey, we wanna get together to talk about this idea. I mean, it might be, if you're interested in taking the lead on it, I think maybe convening people and gauging interest would be a good first step.
Okay.
Before we kind of dive into formalizing it. And make sure the Watershed Council is there.
Absolutely.
And see if they'll,
Chris and Suzanne, yeah.
yeah, and see if they'll,
I do.
staff it or help us.
Yeah. Are you saying, Karen, as a preliminary step to us agreeing on creating a committee?
Yeah, let's see if
For-
there's
okay.
interest. Let's just feel out the Watershed Council and all these other, before we add a new committee, which I'm responding to, like, hearing, hey, we're doing too much and we're adding things too quickly.
Yeah, but I also think now Karen has this informal role of getting these people together, and that's exactly what
We're trying
is one of the problems, right? So,
That's true.
I think leadership on this, that we don't have to decide it tonight, but I think we should decide whether we're gonna take a leadership role as a board on this, or whether, we would leave that to someone else.
I'm just confused if we even need to go that far, if there's already leadership that would do this without our involvement. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to see first before we, do a.
If there is,
But the thing
yeah.
is that it hasn't.
It hasn't
takes-
happened.
It
Yeah.
hasn't happened in years.
Right.
It hasn't happened in years. The lakes are getting more, we're seeing more SADs. We're not handling our invasive species issues.
That's true.
And nobody has taken the lead on this, and so somebody's gotta take the lead. Like the informal lead.
At the,
Fine.
I've gone to the annual Portage Base meeting
Mm-hmm.
for the last 2 years, and they do a fantastic job. It's a full house, and they're very informative, and
Absolutely. Craig's amazing over there,
Yeah,
but he
he is.
doesn't, yeah,
he's
no.
absolutely
I know.
amazing, yeah. And I mean, they have taken a leadership role for their association, And it sounds like you guys are starting that process too on your lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot of interest from the public in this waterway, just from like people that I've heard, there's a lot of people that think, the Watershed Council really likes this idea, and several Dexter Township residents have reached out to me to say they like this idea. So I think generally I feel supportive of it, and don't know if,
Oh, I'm not supportive, yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it is in our strategic plan, protection of the waterways. So overall, I feel positive about it. At the same time, I feel cautious about adding something else.
Oh, we have a project manager, though, right?
Well, we'll see.
So, I mean, bring on projects.
Well, we approved the budget as proposed, but
Yeah.
not necessarily I think the project manager position is still an open question.
The idea that you wouldn't be able to eat the fish out of our Dexter Township lakes makes me really sad.
Canton Portage.
Here we can.
At Portage, yeah, but I know.
I'd be afraid to eat the fish.
Here comes the question, who's monitoring to see if we can even really should eat the fish? Should you eat the fish out of Half Moon Lake? Has it been tested?
So, should we move on to the next item?
Pretty sure it has. Yeah.
Because there wasn't really a discussion, there wasn't really a decision on that. The Pledge of Allegiance,
Sure. I just brought that up. I'd like the board to consider starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll just read what I wrote. I don't know where it is.
it's page 101.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it? quick?
No, it's fine. I would like to discuss during our Board of Trustee meeting and all township committee meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I understand that this may be a controversial issue. I personally have friends that do not recite it at their meetings. However, it is on the agenda, and therefore there's an opportunity for those who wish to recite it to do so. Because it is not on our agenda, we have no opportunity to do so. Personally, it's a kind of a personal issue for me, so I would like to have the opportunity to recite the pledge when we start meetings.
Can I start by saying something? So first I want to say, we did always say the Pledge of Allegiance. And when I took over as supervisor, I think I told you this, no one has complained to me. I mean, we didn't remove, I did not make a conscious decision to remove the Pledge of Allegiance. I just did a survey of a bunch of local townships to find an agenda format that I thought would help clarify for us what were the action items and what were the discussion items. And I had sucked up this template from another township, and it happened not to include the Pledge of Allegiance. And then I subsequently, because Janice brought it up, Michelle has brought it up in the past too, and they've said, hey, this is like a real policy decision that you've taken out the Pledge of Allegiance, but we didn't do it consciously. And I kept it out because when these guys brought it up, I started researching, and then I realized that it actually is controversial, and I was like, oh, it's controversial, so it made me feel like,
Stirring things up.
yeah, like I was stirring things up, and I just let sleeping dogs lie unless somebody brought it forward. I did a lot of research, and at first when I started doing the research, I was like, I found out it has some history that is a little bit troubling, but then I started talking to more people and finding that people find it a comforting ritual and a chance to kind of feel united around a common purpose and around a love of country. And so I ended up feeling like, because it's controversial and because of the history, it's a difficult issue, because even if you make it optional, people are still, they may feel like they're being called out, and there are people with good reasons for finding it troubling. But I do think that making it optional and making it clear that it's optional. I talked to some other, I talked to the mayor of Dexter and some of the other supervisors to find out what they're doing, and they all kind of agree with me that there's almost feels like may not be a perfect solution, but that this solution of clearly making it
Well,
optional.
I would like to point out, personally, I have no issue with somebody choosing not to. like, I think that that's part of the greatness of our country, is choosing not to. So, I highly respect anybody that chooses not to. But for me personally, it's very meaningful because I've had family members serve and lose their lives in the military, and that's it's part of my value set. And so for me, as part of a governing body, to not have that opportunity to start my thought-making, I mean, it's a centering statement, which at the end says with liberty and justice for all, and we may disagree about, how that's panning out in our country, and I respect that, that's what's great about our country is we can disagree respectfully about things. So I think it's, I completely respect anybody that doesn't feel that they want to do the pledge, but because it's not an option for me, and that's really why I brought it up, because we had talked about it in the past, because I just feel like it's no longer a choice because it's not on the agenda. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyhow.
I don't know if I have super formulated thought, but I don't believe in traditions just for the sake of tradition's sake, right? I do think it's important to understand the history of traditions and to be thoughtful about that. I also totally respect what you're saying, Gretchen, that you want to say it and that you don't really have the opportunity to say it if we don't have a space for it. So as a person who does not want to say the Pledge of Allegiance because of the history of it, and it's not that I don't believe in the liberty and justice for all, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail about why I oppose the tradition of it, the history of it, but what are the people who feel uncomfortable saying it? Because what I have done in the past is stand with my hand across my heart and look at the wall and ask for a higher power or whatever we want to call that, ask that I make the most clear and loving decisions for our community that I am capable of making as an individual. So that's what I've done so far. I don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. I really can't say the Pledge of Allegiance. So, to a flag. So that being said, like, what do we do with the diversity? I do not have a problem making a space for the Pledge of Allegiance, but I think that that means there needs to be a space for the entire diversity of our board.
If I add the Pledge of Allegiance with a statement that it's optional, would that?
Well, do I stand and look at a wall, or what do I do then? I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, I know that in some of the municipalities I talk to, people actually get up and leave, if they don't want to, or they're invited to leave. That didn't feel
That
very
doesn't
good.
feel right to me either, because I would ask for a moment of silence
Yeah.
rather than the Pledge of Allegiance. But I think people should be able to say it if they want. But I also, you know what I mean?
I talked to a lot of teachers is what I did,
Mhm.
because teachers, and it was originally written for school children, not for municipal meetings. And I asked if a moment of silence where people could be invited to say the Pledge of Allegiance silently or whatever, would that serve the purpose that Gretchen is talking about, which is this touchstone?
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
It
I mean,
doesn't.
it's the ritual, it's
The
a
ritual
it's
of
a
it.
ritual of
Mhm.
it that feels very meaningful and rewarding. I don't have strong connotation, you know, I don't have the strong negative or the strong positive feelings, other than I did find the history troubling when
I do
when
too.
I read about it. But before that, I didn't really have, when I took it off the agenda, I had no feelings about it at all. And now I've learned a lot, and I've realized that it's a very knotty issue. And I haven't been able to come up with a, I love coming up with compromise solutions that make everybody feel good, and there isn't one. There
Maybe
apparently
I could
isn't.
sing Kumbaya after Gretchen says the Pledge of
People can
Allegiance.
stand up and say, you know, people are
It's a
ready
joke.
to stand up and say whatever is meaningful for them, or I don't know.
No, I don't think you want to get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't do that.
I don't know what, I was just gonna say, I mean, I defer to the board because it's your meeting, you know? So you tell me what to put on the agenda and I will put it there.
So I've been wanting to say something for a while because, of course, saying the Pledge of Allegiance is important to me as well. My father was a veteran, passed away at Agent Orange, young age. My grandparents, my husband's father. So the flag is important to me personally, and I just pulled out a couple things that I printed offline, and they resonated with me. So me personally, first and foremost, I'm here to serve my community, but also I am here representing the flag that sits behind us as a local government entity. So also say is the oath of swearing to support and protect the Constitution and the government of the United States, as well as saying the Pledge of Allegiance as a way to honor our flag, country, and united citizenship. So that resonated with me, and I would like the option to be able to
Well, you said
say the
something,
Pledge of Allegiance.
you said something to me today, if you don't mind me sharing something that you said earlier, which was that as a Democrat, you felt like
Our flag is being,
the flag
being
symbol
called partisan.
is becoming partisan,
Yeah.
and that as Democrats, you felt it was important for us to show that
I'm united for my country,
Yeah.
not for a party, and I really feel like it's became, a partisan thing, and, I mean, it truly shouldn't be. And I realize that there is a past that wasn't,
Pleasant.
wonderful. I understand that, but I also understand we're a melting pot. I understand that my grandmother came over here during the Holocaust, pretty much. I mean, as a Hungarian, barely got over here, that's why I'm here. And, she was definitely very proud to become a United States citizen as well. So being in this chair, I just feel that, me personally, I feel that I should have the opportunity to.
How about this quiet side of the table?
I wonder if, to Laura's point about making space, if there, and I believe, I don't know this for sure, but I think there was another municipality that I saw that did this. That was a Pledge of Allegiance, then followed by a moment of silent reflection that allowed folks to do what they wanted as a part of that. And I don't know if that creates the type of space that Laura is looking for, or if you'd want something more specific, but just trying to think of things that accommodate what seems to be a desire from everybody to be respectful in all of these situations. I don't think that answers your question about what you do during the pledge part, Laura, but I think,
I think we need to think about it. I think we need to think, now that we, continue to have this conversation, but maybe there's a creative way that we can create space and allow for the Pledge of Allegiance, but I need to dream on that.
So what should I do for the next meeting?
I was gonna say, I didn't really answer, I guess, fully the question about the pledge. I do support adding the pledge back to the agenda. I guess I should be clear with that first. But also, definitely would support the opportunity to add something to also create space.
Are you okay? Are you okay with that,
say it, but I also wanna make it comfortable for everybody, you know? I mean, that's the whole thing, justice for all, right? You know, making it comfortable for everybody here and giving people freedom to do what feels right to who they are and their hearts, so. Yeah, I mean, I think we should just at least give the option. And then whoever wants to do it can do it, and then whoever wants to stay silent and do their own thing, that's fine too.
Okay, so I
You know?
think we have most people. Karen, what do you?
I personally do not support the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll pledge my allegiance to the Constitution. I'll pledge my allegiance to the democracy of the United States. I do not like that under God was added in the 1950s because of communism. I think there's always evolutions and changes, and maybe we are at that point of an evolution and a change right now. And do we take a stab at writing our own? Just saying. Think outside the box a little. We all support the Constitution, we all support democracy, we all support the process.
I like the idea of writing our own or adding something that creates space. I too feel some discomfort saying with some of the elements, as I think you guys know, especially now that I've done more research about it. But I think for next month, I'll add it in as optional, put language in that makes it very clear that it's optional, and then we'll keep this conversation alive. And Laura, I would ask you you are kind of a creative thinker. I have been thinking a lot about what I could do that would be satisfying for everybody, you know, satisfy that desire for ritual and connection
And tradition, it
and
seems like it's
tradition,
about tradition.
and patriotism and love of country and love of service and community and all those things, but also those people that have legitimate discomfort for it, not feeling called out, not feeling, you know, so let's think about what we can come up with that would be creative and innovative. I would love to do that.
I'm already percolating.
Yeah,
on it.
percolate. I mean, like I said, I proposed it. I've got a lot of teachers in my family, and I gave them a bunch of different options, like, what if we pledge allegiance to the Constitution, or what if we have a moment of silence, and they were like, no, you know, not good enough, you know? So I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to do, so. Let's move on then to the agenda, to the next discussion item, which is the bicentennial. And I know we had talked in the past about, I had originally put this on the consent calendar and it should go really fast, but then I want to be sensitive about just piling things on. So this would be adding one more event to the community calendar, and I didn't want to just put it on the consent calendar. I wanted to say, does anybody, the Dexter Bicentennial is coming up. It's going to be a very large celebration. We've been invited to have a float or walk in it, and doing that is going to require a little bit of coordination and us to show up, and I just wanted to check in with this group and not make it a consent calendar, but actually get everybody to say, yes, we want to do this and we want to participate. Or no, we don't, and let's not add it to the calendar.
I'm all for a parade.
I think we should definitely. Only bicentennial only comes every 200 years.
That's what I think.
Right.
That's what
Bring
I
out the
think.
ponies.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not gonna be around for the next one.
Not fighting that.
I mean, I had a sense when the guy came and talked to us about it that we would all want to do it, but then I was like I said, I pulled it off the consent calendar at the last minute because I just wanted to check and make sure. So yes,
Yeah.
we add that to the community calendar, okay. I'll do an amended community calendar next month with that on it. So, okay, solar legislation, this is probably a little bit bigger.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a quick report last time, a couple of things. The solar legislation, I also, this came from, I went to the legislative conference that the Michigan Township Association had back in January. It was that day when it was, the roads were frozen and session ended up being canceled, so legislative day in Lansing is supposed to be where you get to meet with your legislators at lunch and you learn about, and of course session was canceled because you couldn't drive on the road. So needless to say, I did not get up there at the start. However, I did go to the renewable energy and state siting legislation session, which was pretty much a repeat of exactly what they had done. It was the week after the webinar that I reported out on last month. And basically, what I would recommend at this point is that we're gonna need to put together an ordinance at some point to address the large-scale solar. Now, large-scale solar, wind and battery, it's 100 megawatts of solar, 50, wait, I said on here, how do we put this?
50 megawatts.
50 megawatts at 500 acres.
Yeah, 50 megawatts for the solar and 100 for wind. But, so basically, anything smaller than that, we should have an ordinance for anyhow. So we don't have any solar ordinance according to our planner. So there's two phases to this. One is the smaller size projects, which are like rooftop or like somebody's backyard or something like that. And then there's then up to the big, utility scale. And the way that this works, the state siting, is the applicant for a solar project has to come to the township first, and the township has to be problematic. And then the applicant will say, well, the township wouldn't work with us. I mean, this is really simplifying it, but basically, the applicant would say the township's not working with us, so MPSC, we want you guys to process our project. And this is not like, they can't come in and say, we just want to put it right here. This has to be with the property owner wanting to do the project. So there's a lot of intent in here that has to, so one of the things we need to find out, is there anybody out there that's trying to do solar in our community as part of that project? So what I recommended, based on trying to the planner and based on these different webinars, there's another one tomorrow that County Conservation District's doing tomorrow night that I'm going to try to attend, is that we have a subcommittee, and it also, because it overlaps with our preservation, farmland preservation, like some of those farms, could be possibly end up in a renewable energy project. So what I recommended in this is that we have a subcommittee of the two chairs, the Planning Commission and the Farmland Open Space Commission chairs, and then the two board liaisons, which is Laura and myself, and that we meet next month and come back with a timeline and plan to address both parts, like the small scale solar and this other looming thing that is going to be effective in November. So we have some time, but I don't think we really know what's currently happening in our community around proposed projects. And so that would be, talking with local farmers and
Right.
And then how do we integrate this with a preservation program so that we're being fair to the farmers, but also using wise use of our tax dollars. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I think anyhow, does anybody have any questions? I guess is.
I think it sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
You guys are on top of it, and I think
Yeah.
we need a solar ordinance, because otherwise we're.
Right, and we need to bring the community together. We need to check in with the farmers, we need to educate them. I know I've had a number of conversations with some local farmers, and we need to bring people together to talk about it and understand it, and help make the kinds of decisions that, that weigh in on whatever this ordinance is gonna look like.
So the one thing that I'm learning more and more is that there's these things called CREOs, which is Compatible Renewable Energy Ordinance, which is what the state siting legislation is saying the township should have, but it's becoming clear that nobody really knows what that is. And then there's another thing that's called a workable ordinance, which is more subjective to what we wanna require. So it's a lot of moving parts, I guess. And also, I think I put in here, there's also a ballot proposal to repeal the state siting legislation, and they need to get about 400,000 signatures by the end of May. And then if they got the signatures, it would go on the ballot in November to repeal that. And the MTA has come out in favor of that repealing. So, and I would just say, I'm a big advocate of local control, but I also am very much aware that everybody supports clean energy and fixing, weather, we talked about extreme weather last summer, but nobody wants to have one. So we have a big problem in our state, and that our state legislators said the reason they did this legislation is because we can't meet their climate plan to get to the clean energy if people don't start accepting these projects. And that's what's been happening around the state, is there's recalls and referendums and moratoriums and all this stuff has been happening over the last couple of years, and that's why it got to this point where they're addressing it by saying, if you don't work with the local community, if the local community won't work with you, then you can come to the state. But it isn't ideal. Like, I talked to Judy Allen, who's the MTA lobbyist, and she said it happened really fast, and there's a lot of things that could have been improved, and I was like, well, do you think there'll be more legislation this year? And she said she didn't think so. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, I guess we'll just see. But in the meantime, we definitely need to do some things locally, and we definitely need to explain to people that what the size, I mean, these would be 500 acres or more, is I think what I put in here, right? Because you need like 10 acres per megawatt. So anyhow, that's that. So we will meet in March, and then Marty, you'd be apprised that I'll be calling you to schedule something as early as possible, and then in March, so we can, if there's anything more. And then not only by solar, there was a little bit, there's a lot of different, a few sessions, and there was, I don't know if you're aware that if there are any non-recurring costs relative to this presidential primary, you can get reimbursed. So are you getting it, so you're doing that already?
In the process.
Okay, cool. And then I also, I got all you guys a little sticky, this is actually from Eagle, I see it says very lightly at the bottom, Eagle, which is energy, environment, Great Lakes, and energy is the department. So it says Fresh Coast is the best coast. And it has a map of Michigan on there. And then finally, I'm gonna get a copy. There were a bunch of the rural development, USDA, they had like little booths, and there's a grant program for water and waste disposal. Like, there might be some stuff there. And then, so I have some other handouts that, I wanted to just share. So, but overall, considering that mostly, there was like only 200 people there because the weather was so crappy, it was a relatively good conference for the day. And I know, how many people are going to the one in the end of April?
Well, that was something I was gonna ask, because we need to make the Sam is gonna start doing that, making the travel arrangements and all that in the next week or so, so we need to know how many people are going.
Okay.
I'm planning on
Yes?
it. Yes.
So I don't know if, maybe we don't have to do a call for
You
that right
don't?
now,
Oh,
but just
okay.
everybody,
Thought we were-
just be aware Sam's gonna be reaching out and trying to find out who wants to go. And then make the arrangements, so.
And I'm sure you
That
guys
was-
are already on it,
and-
but have you done an invitation, or are you planning to do an invitation with the Open Space and Land Preservation Board to the farmers? Like an education board?
That's the whole point, is pulling them
We
to
wanna
do
have
an
a
educational
meeting to
session.
talk about what we need to do.
And then that's gonna be,
When we did the invitation, I mean, that was,
Right.
it was resignated very well.
right.
And they were able to show up. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love it if there was a special meeting, or if we dedicated
Yeah,
a
we're gonna
longer
come up
meeting
with a
to
plan
this, because this is
to
really
bring back
important.
to the board.
I think following that model, Michelle, is gonna be one of the ideas, yeah.
Because they have been reaching out to our local farmers, and our farmers, I mean, they want to farm, and that's, so that's too, so.
But just to be clear, you can farm.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
the project, so, but anyhow. I think
Does
there-
anybody else have any questions or comments for Gretchen? And otherwise, I think we're through the agenda. So,
Almost.
okay, then we can move, yeah, we're getting close to, we're through with our discussion and action items I meant. So then we had our staff reports. I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of the staff reports or the metrics. And if not,
Just one quick one, just because it's the first year for Michelle. ballot returns versus early, are we seeing folks using the early voting site, or do we know yet?
I have a little stat I can give you super quick for the first day.
We got this update on Monday, and it was not,
Sad.
it was kind of not very
It was,
many.
it was kind of, yeah, I mean, okay, I will be honest, it was much lower than I thought because, Clerk Flintoff, she went ahead and, proceeded with.
Scioto Township, yeah.
Yeah, Scioto Township, she went ahead and she's like, I'm gonna do this, for their, special election, and I think she's had a better turnout the first day than 5 municipalities at one location in the first day. So, just a little FYI, let me see where he's at, if you don't mind. Okay, so, first day, our region, Sylvan Township, which encompasses 5 municipalities, there were 31 voters that went ahead and either took their ballot, I don't know if they may have taken it, their absentee voter ballot from Dexter Township that they were mailed, or perhaps they opted to receive a ballot on demand, which is a fantastic machine. I really hope that the state wants to go that route in the future, so I don't have to order so many ballots, and wonder who is going to pick what partisan. And Scioto Township, 71, Ypsilanti, 31, Pittsfield Township, 66. And also, so Dexter Township residents can either opt to go to Sylvan Township during the early 9 days, which is going on until the 25th, as well as the Learning Resource Center off of Hogback Road. And they had 30 people that ended up showing up that day.
So it's a big change, but not a big turnout.
Yes.
For
Those
the
that
big
know how to
change.
knit, they're
Yeah.
having a fantastic time,
Yeah.
so.
Well, but that was just one day.
That was one.
That
day.
was the first day.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
And we're
that's
only,
okay.
we're only like 4
Yeah.
days in. That's
Yeah.
not-
We're
it's
4 days
actually
in.
better than I.
Well,
It's better
right,
than I
well,
thought.
I mean, it's not, yeah, you're right, you're right. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions about the staff reports? And a shout out to Sam and everybody who contributed to that township report this month. That was-
Very nice.
That was great. All of you contributed, so. Okay, then with no more questions, I'm going to do the second call for public comment, this time on non-agenda items.
Oh, wait a minute. Karen, I was waiting to get to the FOSS board report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, member of the public, you're going to have to wait another minute.
Public person, just a minute.
Yeah.
Karen, let me pass this down. Just really quickly, you can read the report, that's in the packet, but I wanted to just report on the fact that we did have this conversation about restricting the $283,000 to open space or natural areas. And the board, the board was really against doing that, okay? And these are the following reasons, what I'm passing out to you. I think I'll just bring your attention to a few of them. It's important to know that our open space and natural areas are equally prioritized in the rubric, which I think is important. I think it's interesting too that 24% of the land in Dexter Township is conserved, and most of it is natural areas, okay? So we have a lot of natural area conservation. If you look at the report, I think that Barry's report, where is it?
Which is page 116, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think in his opening paragraph, he talks about that there were there's 7 current applications being considered. 3 were scored on the open space land rubric, while 2 of the other 4 have notable areas of woods. So that's the other thing, that there's quite a bit of farmland that gets preserved that also has natural areas on it, okay? And a second mailing to owners of sizable parcels will be done. And in that database, there's 34 that are primarily farmland and 47 that are primarily exclusively open space. So, given that, we don't think it's a good idea to pit open space, and I know that wasn't the intention either, I just want to say, but to not pit open space against farmland, that we're really prioritizing open space and natural areas as much as we are farmland. And that the initial mission was to preserve farmland so that it does not get gobbled up by development. So I feel like the issue is, really clear, and that we want the board to know that we're conscious about this need to preserve open space and natural areas.
And Laura had shared some of this with me in advance, and I told her, but I will say this publicly now, I really appreciated the follow-up, that you heard me and came back and really heard and understood my questions and concerns, and made me feel really comfortable with the process and the use of those funds. So I was really I was surprised and really almost moved that you, even though the board had said, no, we don't want to restrict the funds, so you really didn't need to come back and give me a response, and I thought it was really very kind of you to do that, and I appreciated it.
Well, you're welcome, but and what I really thought we should do is have the FOSS board discuss it,
Yeah.
and that's what happened, and that's, yeah.
That was,
So-
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, thanks.
Did anybody have any comments about that, or? Okay, then, anything else on the committee reports or the data? And if not, second call for public comment.
I don't know who I would hand these to. Do I just hand them to you or?
What,
Okay.
We'll pass them down.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. So my name is Martha Ross Williams. I am actually from Ypsilanti Township, but I'm here today representing the Citizens for Local Choice ballot initiative. If you are not aware, on November 25th, 2023, the governor signed changes into PA 233 and House Bill 5120. Those changes allow for your board to be superseded as it relates to zoning and master planning for large-scale wind, solar, and battery manufacturing projects. Now, I always like to make sure I make this clear. This is not about anti-clean energy. This has nothing to do with that. This has to do with local municipalities having a right to, I hope you heard everything.
We did.
we can hear you, yeah.
This is about local municipalities, you having a right to duly zone and master plan their communities. As a former township official, that's why I got on this issue, because of the fact that I do believe strongly in PA 233. And I believe that those decisions, as it relates to these projects, should be able to stay within the local communities, as in your board, your planning commission. I do believe that most townships have the ability to make those decisions on their own. What we are looking to do is basically get this initiative on the ballot. It will take 550,000 signatures. We're going a little bit above the requirement in order to do so by May 29th. And I'm not sure if you're aware that the Michigan Township Association, which rarely steps in on any ballot initiative, has came out and endorsed this initiative, as well as the Michigan Farm Bureau, and I've heard you talk about that there is farmland in this area. With that, I hope that you will learn more about the initiative. I have basically got an FAQ. Salem Township, which I know is a little far away from here on the other side, but in the same aspect, when I attended a meeting, they did pass a resolution, but that was already on their agenda. I believe that in the email, I think I emailed every township that I'm responsible for, and put a sample resolution. It's up to your board if you do want to pass that. However, we would ask, if nothing else, that you let your constituents know about this initiative, so they can, make a decision on if they would like to at least support, if nothing else, this getting on the ballot. Getting it on the ballot does not mean that they're going to vote for or against it. it just means it gets done better. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'm sorry I'm a little late here because I had Superior Township that changed their meetings, and then I had to drive all the way out here.
Oh my gosh.
You weren't too late.
You weren't, yep, you weren't too
Right
late.
on time, right?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? I wanted to say I have volunteered in helping the clerk get out the ballots this year. It was an onerous process in chaos. And I have real strong feelings about the organization of the office and the office manager and her assistant's responsibilities in being able to make their actions, especially with that picky vote. We were lucky to get out the applications in a timely manner in December. It got nice when I could say, call Pitney Bowes, and when we called Pitney Bowes, oh, you're behind, and yes, your lease can be allowed to have a new machine in your office. And then the ink got misplaced for the new machine. So, their coordination in that office and having things in the place where they're supposed to be, and people decide to take something out is mandatory. The second thing I would like to say is I totally hear Karen about the lakes. And as you talk about a project manager, and I think that's a good name, one of the things you need to think about is grant writing. And with you, you need to write grants. There are tons and tons and tons of grants out there and money available in the state of Michigan for water everything. Also for water everything, if you work with schools, get kids interested, there's lots of money out there. And there's lots of money for Michigan Clean Energy and doing things that our township should be looking at. And that's really getting important because that money's going to dry up if we don't take advantage of it. So, those are my comments. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you, Lois.
Sorry about the breach of protocol earlier.
Oh, that was no problem. It wasn't. I felt bad. I wanted to say, go ahead, Ness.
My name's Eric Worsham. I had reached out to Sam earlier about volunteering my time to help, and she said I should come to this meeting because there might be an opportunity for me to help out on one of the committees for boards. And so here I am, so that's it. Volunteering my time.
Oh, gosh.
For elections.
No, I believe it was, yeah, well, I'm willing to help wherever I can.
Aaron,
What's
you're on the.
Yeah, we
put you
oh,
on
we
the board.
appointed you
Yeah.
earlier in the
Yeah.
agenda.
Oh my gosh.
And Sam sent me your resume
Yeah.
on, for multi-lakes for the sewer system.
Yeah.
And I'm fine, we need to talk, because I'm on multi-lakes, but,
All
yeah.
she
Okay.
said was, where do you want to go? I said, wherever I'm needed. And she said, here too. I said, I'll volunteer for both. And she said, multi-lakes isn't quite ready for you yet, but maybe you can help
No,
out
that-
over at zoning. So, that's it.
Okay, well, great, well, welcome, and thank you for,
Yeah.
thank you for
Thank you
stepping
for
forward.
staying.
Well, this has been fascinating.
Yeah, yeah,
Learned a lot.
Yeah, sorry, because I thought you were from Corman Farms.
I did too.
So
I
was
did
like-
too.
I'm like, why is the Corman Farms guy still hanging around?
I
when his
totally
decision
thought
was
the
made?
same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, so it's great that you came and introduced yourself. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Marty, Alicia? Do you guys, want to say anything, or? No, just saying that you thought it was Corman Farms. Yeah, we are saying the same thing.
I can understand that, yeah.
Janice, or do any members of the board want to say anything? I want to remind you guys, number one, bring your budget books in to get them totally updated, and number two, give me your committee stuff with the date and time written on it, so I can share that with Sam, and three, let Sam know if you're going to go to the MTA meeting. Okay,
Wait,
so
can
anyway.
you say the last thing again?
Let Sam know if you're going to go to the MTA annual.
What about the committee update?
So
This thing, you can just write on mine.
take that
This one, yeah.
handout
Okay.
and write on it the date and time of your meeting so Sam can add it to.
Oh, okay, okay.
Me
All right.
too.
Lonnie, yeah,
Thank you.
anybody that, yes,
I don't
on
know
your,
if I got that. Did I get that?
And then do we just leave it here?
It's in the right.
The regular packet, okay.
I passed out at everyone's seat a memo from
okay, guys.
the Michigan Public Service Commission. And you all probably remember a few months ago, I submitted comments around DTE. And the Public Service Commission's case that they had established about providing incentives
Hold on
and.
one second, hold on a second, Lonnie. Hey, Lois, got Lois, hey, can you guys take that outside, because our meeting's not adjourned yet, and it's, yeah, thank you.
That there was a question from the Michigan Public Service Commission around DT and consumers and providing incentives for performance as well as different metrics and penalties. As a follow-up to anyone who had submitted comments, they sent out this memo, and that's what I've given to everyone. I'm sorry, I don't know why, but it seems like every time they respond to this, it's like the day after our packets go out, so I couldn't get it to you prior to the meeting, but provided copies and also sent it via email so that you have it electronically. And they're basically requesting additional comments addressing 4 specific questions from the commission, and all of those comments are due by March 1st. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out to you, so that if anyone else wanted to provide additional comments or had feedback on those individual questions, that they could do that.
Great, thank you, Lonnie. Any other members of the board have additional comments or
I do.
concerns?
I'm going to have to change the coffee chat for March 6th on the single hauler, and I'll just release a later date and put it out that we have to change that date, I have a conflict.
Okay.
And the other thing is that, talking about informal committees, I'm putting together an informal committee of residents have reached out, and the residents of private roads are interested in getting together to share vendor information, process information, just maintenance issues that they're all experiencing, to see again if we can share information, share data, get some economics of scale. And so I reached out to the local roads committee, and I missed their meeting this month regretfully, but.
No, it's tomorrow at
Oh,
9.
it's tomorrow?
Yeah.
That's my
We moved
pickleball
it,
game.
we moved it for, you got 3 members of that committee sitting here right now. so-
Oh, good. You guys do this. So we have a bunch of residents that would like to put a private road group together for economical, for economy of scale, and share vendors, and what's the best way to maintain all our private roads, which we know, how many miles of private roads do we have?
25.
25
Well,
so,
private roads, no, I don't know.
yeah, this is private roads. So, and I'm interested in this because I maintain our private road, so I'm willing to,
Yeah, so we have that on our
so
agenda.
now
for
I have
sure.
2 informal committees.
I think we've identified our special projects problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the other thing is, we just said bicentennial, who's gonna head that?
Yeah, that's
Should
what
we
I'm-
not right now say, this is the point person? If Gretchen and Laura are becoming the point person for the solar issue, who's gonna be the point person for bicentennial? Thanks, Laura.
I will be.
I'm pointing with my pinky to be
All
polite.
of the
I
public
thought that was
engagement,
going to do.
community engagement, and definitely parades. I love that
Yeah,
stuff.
that's it.
Anybody else? Okay, then at 8:30, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and compliment all of you guys on getting through a number of very complex and knotty issues in 2.5 hours. And thank you very much.
So I still don't know what I'm supposed to do about this.